What's up, everybody? Welcome to Ink Drink Think, episode 21. By special request, Matt Battaglia is joining us once again for the Daredevil episode. We've been talking about doing Daredevil since we started the podcast, and we've just been pushing it off. And I recently asked online what characters people would want to see on the show, and Matt reached out and said, if you're doing Daredevil, have me on. So here we are, finally getting it done. Todd is shaking in his seat, eager to talk about Daredevil, particularly Frank Miller right now. So, guys, of course, without further ado, I am Michael Pickard, and as always, I am joined by my wonderfully talented co-hosts and friends, Johnny Wise.
Hey, Johnny. So tonight I am drawing. I was trying to I wanted to draw Bullseye in there somewhere, and I feel like with those two, the thing I like about their relationship is that I can always just picture them just fucking slugging it out, just barely any skill by the end, just both of them just trading punches, and I wanted to get that in the drawing somehow.
Yeah.
And I was playing around with a million different poses. And getting rid of all of them, and eventually just decided to do in the old specifically Spider-Man comics, there would be Spider-Man in one splash page flipping over a city, and there's 10 Spider-Men, and they're all the opacity's dropped on all of them, and then the front one is the one that they've drawn fully. I listened to an interview where Tradmore was talking about that and was why didn't they just draw all of them fully? No one thinks there's 10 Spider-Men. So I'm doing that. I'm just drawing 6 figures. I'm drawing 3 sets of Bullseye and Daredevil just punching each other on a rooftop. Really punishing myself on this one. No pun intended. Just drawing lots of figures, lots of buildings. Fuck it. Probably not going to get it done in this episode, but I will try my best. And to help me get through it, I'm drinking rum and coke that I've mixed in the can like absolute trash.
In the can, dude. Wow.
I wasn't before, but I just got lazy with it this time. So I just opened the can and was drink a little bit, pour it in, we're good. I'm ready to go.
Nice.
In the contest of egos that's been occurring on Ink Drink Think, Johnny's trying to bring his A game today. But also,
I didn't intend to, but yeah, it's ramping it up every time, isn't it?
But also contesting for the biggest ego on Ink Drink Think, our fellow co-host and friend, Nate Wells.
No ego here. No ego here. Johnny's got me this episode. I'm drawing one Daredevil, one medium-sized Daredevil on a rooftop. I know, just one
no
figure.
story pages?
No pages this week.
There's no panels?
It's too much work.
No lettering even?
Too much work. Yeah, so I'm drawing Daredevil just looking down off of a rooftop. I'm imagining it to be a church because it's Daredevil, and he's the only superhero that has religion. So, that's a cool thing. There's doves flying in the background. It's majestic, dude. Yeah, it's mostly a drawing of a building. So it might be kind of boring to look at. Like I said, Daredevil's kind of this big, and then the building's yay big. But I'm liking it. The pencils are pretty finished, so I don't have to figure anything out, which is kind of where I like it. But yeah, and tonight I'm drinking a local beer, Act of Faith, because I'm drawing a church.
Well, that's great, man. And I've seen your pencils for tonight, and when you flip the camera around, I'm sure the audience is going to freak out because even though you just dumbed it down as Daredevil on a church rooftop, it's stellar. So
Thank you.
It's going to turn out great. Of course, guys, Teacher Todd himself is joining us tonight. And in full fashion, he's brought the textbooks. So, Teacher Todd, you got the floor.
Yes. I have all my Daredevil omnibuses, hardcovers. And so I am redrawing Daredevil 181.
Ooh, nice.
The classic final confrontation. No spoilers.
Ooh, yeah.
Daredevil, Bullseye, and Elektra. Some of the greatest fight scenes I've ever seen in my life. Very emotional. If you're going to pick up one Daredevil issue, I really would read it from beginning to end, but it's a good spot to stop in and see what all the hullabaloo was about when Frank was on fire. and it's double sized, so it's huge. And so I'm also trying to do the logo, which has been interesting. I tried doing my own version of it, and it doesn't really work. I might cheat and go on the internet and see if I can just find a PNG of it and stick it in, but I'm not really sure. And then, so I've got that on one layer because it takes so many layers. And then here's my version of it so far. There's drawings underneath those characters, but I've been trying to get the shapes right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man.
One benefit I'm going to say about going digital is that I draw things and then I can use them later. So I did a Psy of Elektra that I have dropped in, and I'm going to put those in their hands. And I also did like a generic Daredevil logo, which I'm going to tell you right now comes in really handy when you need to stick that on top of somebody's chest.
Looks kind of sick over the top of the whole thing.
Yeah, it's really
I
good
wasn't going
framing.
to use it, and then I did that just to drop it in, and I was like, maybe I should put that in there somewhere. So I don't know. I kind of want to do it just like real faithfully, but there's a part of me that also just wants to like do something interesting and graphic with it. Plus, like, one, dare I say it, fail of this cover is I think the color scheme is really terrible. But I don't know what I'm going to use as an alternative. So I'm going to try to do a better color scheme, and I hope something good happens.
Well, I'm crazy excited to hear what banter is going to occur tonight between yourself, Teacher Todd, and of course our special guest Matt Battaglia, who I'm going to jump to in one moment. But you guys are going to have this. I'm kind of like lighting a match and throwing it into an oil pit here. I'm just gonna go Daredevil,
motion.
and
Just
flick the match, and let it blaze onto the screen here. But of course, guys, he is one of our frequent guests on Ink Drink Think. Matt Battaglia, you have the floor.
I'm just very excited to get on for a Daredevil episode because, as we're going to talk about, it's like those Frank Miller Daredevil run, that that whole stretch is sort of definitional comics. And I haven't drawn a Daredevil in ages, so I'm excited. And I also have been keeping track of the arms race that's been occurring on Ink Drink Think, and I'm trying my hand to draw on a page, inking a full page tonight. We'll see how far I can go.
There we go.
Yeah.
Oh
we'll
man.
see where I get with it. He's fighting the hand. Nothing says Daredevil like ninjas, and I already screwed up an arm, so yeah, we'll see. We'll see where we go.
But of course, guys, so we can get into that Daredevil talk sooner rather than later, I'll round out our 5-man band here. Like I said, I'm Michael Pickard. Tonight, as opposed to what I normally do, which is go in with just pencils, I actually have inked about half the page that I'm drawing tonight. Partially out of wanting to get ahead of things, and secondly because I was just so eager to draw it that I just couldn't get my hands away from it. But I'm going to flip around the camera here. And like I said, I'm going to flick that match into the oil pit. Guys, is Frank Miller's Daredevil run the greatest superhero comic run of all time?
Matt, you want to take this?
I mean, in my opinion, it's the only one that you can say, like, here's a Marvel Comics that you can kind of... It's one of the few that I can point to and say, here, you want to read a Marvel comic? This is it. We were talking about Ennis on the Punisher, which is also one of my favorites, but I mean the Punisher isn't really a superhero, so also definitely not even the Daredevil run is a stretch of saying that it's widely age appropriate, but the Punisher Ennis Punisher, definitely you're not handing it to you shouldn't be giving it to a kid. So at least here, he only kills ninjas generally.
Yeah.
But but we were talking about all I mean, there is, you're showing off the library, but there's so many sort of facets of Jess Miller's time on the character.
Yeah.
And all these amazing collaborations too that he did.
Yeah.
So we were talking a bit, and I wanted you to kind of fill in people, but like that Elektra Lives Again is one of the most fascinating pieces, I think, from that run, from an art perspective, but also like it seemed to be happen sort of out of he stylistically he never does it again.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I think 300 is similar in spirit, but again, yeah, it's they're like the page designs and the storytelling are vastly different in it.
Yeah. And it's also like the one where you really see Lynn Varley's contribution in such a huge way.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'll also say this about Miller's Daredevil is what I get really excited by in terms of idea or legend of how comics are made is the stories of folks where a book was about to get canceled, so they put somebody new and untested on it and said, go take the brakes off, do whatever you want, it doesn't really matter, and it surprises everybody by becoming wildly successful. And I don't know the exact history, but I think Daredevil, every time Miller went on Daredevil or came back to Daredevil, I think Daredevil was in danger of getting canceled. And he not only revived it, but made it one of the best sellers. And I'm fascinated by that.
Yeah, and you don't see it happen that much anymore.
No.
Usually it seems like things just go into a death spiral. They're done and they don't come back.
Yeah.
It's one of the few success stories, it seems like.
Well, and it's hard for me to believe that and I do believe this, but I guess he did some issues of Spider-Man guest starring Daredevil, and that was where he discovered his fascination for him. Whereas I just assumed that he had his eye on Daredevil for a long time and figured he'd wait until he got his chance. But it amazes me that he came into the character in some ways cold and thought, you could do something interesting here. The way that he takes over the character, there's already something interesting and new going on right with the first issue, which I really love with Deathstalker. But then you slowly watch Miller and the writer Roger McKenzie kind of having a behind-the-scenes battle over the direction of the story, and I think Miller just being like, I don't need this guy to, do this.
Right.
I want Anami, and Klaus Janson is starting to think really. I mean, boy, if anybody else had been the inker on that book, I was thinking about it the other night. I was like, what if it had been like Bob Wyachek? And it's not a knock against Wyachek or anybody else, but talk about the perfect collaborator.
It never would have worked without him.
You'd think, right?
He just because Jansen ends up doing so much of the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
And the guy basically pencils, inks, and colors the whole thing.
Right.
After a certain point.
Oh, that's right. He colored it too. Yeah, I forgot about that.
And the subsequent collections, the ones that are readily available, kind of do his colors an injustice, but but he
made for newsprint.
Yeah, and also like they recolor them and they do a lot more. If you compare the reprints with the originals, they're quite a ways different. But but you can see I don't have it in the room, but in the one Marvel Omnibus, they reprint the final issue of Daredevil of their run together. They reprint Miller's layouts, and the story's all there and the compositions are all there, but man, they are layouts. And so like when you look at how much work Jansen's doing in a month, it's it's really impressive how what they were able to pull off together.
It really is, yeah.
Well, yeah, there was that one story of I don't quite remember what happened. Didn't they have to like scrap an issue and do one in like a week or two?
Yes.
Yes.
I can't remember exactly what happened there, but yeah,
I can
something
tell you.
happened and they had to bang one out. Yeah, please do.
So I met Klaus Janson at the last, I think, comic book show that I went to, Rose City here in Portland, and I don't even know if I knew he was going to be at the show, but I saw him, and I basically kind of kept an eye out for when he didn't have a huge line. And there was a point where it was kind of getting late and he was kind of looking bored, and I went over and tried not to freak out. And I was like, I can't tell you how exciting it is just to be talking to you. And then I said, do you mind if I ask you a few questions? And he was really friendly. I was surprised, actually.
That's good to hear.
And I felt really good about that. But anyways, the point is, I said, I've always wanted to know. There are so many areas in Daredevil, especially during some of even the classic issues, where I thought, how did they let them get away with this art being so abstract at times? Especially, as I said to him, the prevailing popular inker was a guy like Terry Austin, or say Joe Sinnott, and Janson's work was so the opposite of any of that. It was abstract, it was dark, it was chunky. And I said, did you ever get any pushback from anybody saying, hey, you can't do that? That doesn't work here. And he said, no. He said one of the great things about Marvel at that point, and Jim Shooter in particular, was he was really supportive of what we were doing. But he said what happened was there was an Angel Dust story, which I think guest starred the Punisher, and Comics Code nixed it, said you can't publish this. And they had already finished the first issue. So they went in, Miller and Janson went into either Milgram or Macchio's office. I forget who was editing it at the time. It might have been somebody else. But and they said, well, we'll just have to run a reprint issue, some old, Gene Colan thing or whatever. And they said, no, we don't want to do that. Can we, we can knock out a story in 2 weeks if you just give us a little time. And the editor said, all right. So that was the issue where there's a guy that gets like kind of an Iron Man suit. You remember that one at all?
Is it the Stilts issue?
No, this was way before that. This was, I want to say that maybe it was the issue before Elektra showed up. So it was kind of the last issue where Miller really, really took over as, like full-fledged, his book. So there was still kind of an element of like the old Daredevil in it. And there's a guy that you can tell they're making it up as they go along. There's a cover, I want to say it's probably like 165, where like somebody's looking at him through a screen and like strangling him maybe.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's 167,
something like that.
Yeah,
sounds right. And anyways, they knocked it out, but they also, you notice a real stylistic change. There was a lot more detail and things, and they did it, and it was much more abstract, and it was a hit. Everybody loved it, and they went, well, we're gonna keep pushing in this direction as long as everybody's okay with it, as long as the fans don't abandon the book. And that's where after that they really, I think, found their confidence of, let's do this our way and the fans are gonna follow. And I think that was when they really started pushing things in a more pure Miller Janson direction. But I guess that was the, and if you read it, there is kind of a making it up as we go along element to it. Roger McKenzie might have been in there, the writer who was.
I think he was.
Yeah, right. That sounds
I'm looking at it right now. It's tough to tell. I wonder if they. I wonder. I don't know off the top of my head, but I wonder if they rearranged things in the collections, to put that story back in it, or because the whole Child's Play storyline ends up playing out after the Punisher gets out of jail, which is part of their regular run. So they do a good job of fitting in that whole, they make all the whatever edits that the Comics Code wanted, and it ends up fitting in perfectly fine. But I do wonder if they reshuffled things in the trades. Right. But what I'm saying is in all the collected versions of it's I wonder if they put it into where it was meant to go in order, I guess.
Oh, you think? I never noticed.
I don't know.
Take another look.
There's a lot of big deal. It was like the way that there were all these very odd, like tiny things that the code wanted changed in that storyline, and that seemed to be. There were a number of articles written about it.
Yeah. Well, I know you can tell, like, when they did get around to printing the Punisher Child's Play issues, there were pages that were clearly from the previous, from the original run, but then Miller had to go in and redraw or add to certain pages to fit it back into the regular continuity. And
yeah, that's what I'm not. If they changed anything in it upon reprints, or like where they placed it, because I also know that he created extra pages for when they released the Elektra saga.
Elektra. Yeah.
Did any the other guys? Do you guys did you guys read other Daredevil runs, or are we all in agreement that, like, did we all just basically read the Miller stuff and then kind of leave it at that?
I've read a fair bit of the Somni stuff. Somni, how do you pronounce it? I don't remember a lot of the story. I remember the story of it being really cool, most of it, but I got it mostly for Somni's art. So that's what I remember more than anything. But I remember it being good.
You started with Daredevil, Johnny?
No, I think I started with Born Again. I think I read it in. I read it in some collection, when I was like a kid. Same with like, Mazzucchelli was a weirdly early one for me.
That's good.
Because like in the UK, we just have like a lot of printed, like reprints of, like, we have like magazines a lot of the time that just like reprint old comics. Right. And like I didn't even know when it was from. I was just like, you just pick it up and like you're like, okay, I'm reading a Batman story. And with this, it was like there was just a Daredevil story that was part of Born Again. It definitely wasn't all of Born Again, and I picked that up a lot later. But no, I definitely started with Daredevil on Born Again, I think. And then the Chris Somni stuff I read was a lot later, just because I started getting into his work.
Right.
Yeah, the Samney stuff holds up because it's his art. I mean.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's just.
I don't know that I really read it though, but his art's awesome. He does action, and yeah, I don't know if anyone's reading Firepower, but that's pretty good. He's doing that with Kirkman, and that's another great just use of him. Like, he's just what a great like storyteller.
Yeah.
Yeah, Johnny, the run you're talking about with Samney, that was written by Mark Waid, and it's definitely a very far departure from the Frank Miller stuff. Like, it's a much more swashbuckling Daredevil, like very 60s, 70s Daredevil, as opposed to Frank Miller.
Yeah, that was something I had to get used to. I was like, oh, this is not what I expected from a Daredevil book.
Have you guys read any of the current run going on?
No,
I haven't.
By Chip Zdarsky. It is honestly, like, when I started reading it, and every time there's a new Daredevil creative team, I try to like pick it up, and none of them grab my attention in the same way that the Chip Zdarsky run has. With Marco Cicchetto, and oh my god, it's incredible. It's I think the second best Daredevil run I've read since Frank Miller. They do really interesting stuff with it, and the cast is pretty well contained. It's just like, it's Matt, it's Wilson Fisk, and Elektra. That's really the majority of the like main protagonists of the story. and the balance of those three characters is really well handled.
I have a question because I feel like they keep doing this, but it seems like the problem that I've had with most of the and it happens in the Samney run too, where half of the book is just Daredevil denying that he's Matt Murdock and vice versa, or he's no longer, like, he's quitting being Daredevil, and then someone else is Daredevil, and then he's got to fight that guy, and then but he's actually just Matt Murdock, or like they seem to keep writing into that corner, and I kind of it's like, he's either he's Daredevil or he's not Daredevil, but like pick one, damn it.
That's definitely something the current run falls into the same pitfalling of, though. It's a little bit separate, though, because the opening of the story is Matt Murdock accidentally kills a crook during an outing of crime fighting, and it makes him second guess his whole reason for being Daredevil, because he's just like wantonly taking a life unintentionally, but like it happened, and he's like, there are actual repercussions here, and he inevitably gives himself to the police. And Elektra is the current Daredevil in the books right now.
Okay.
But it is that same pitfall where it's like, I think that's one of the reasons that most Daredevil runs aren't well remembered, is because every single time it's like, is it the denial that he's Daredevil to the public? Is he constantly trying to evade, the scrutiny of, oh, I can't let anybody know, I can't let Foggy know that I'm Daredevil, or I can't let, the other people in my law firm know that, or that anybody who works for me when I'm mayor.
Like he's always telling people, though.
Yeah. That was like even with the Maleev Bendis run, which I generally liked. It's also like a lot of it's Matt Murdock Daredevil, and he has to deal with people knowing his secret identity. But that one was neat because it sort of ends with Daredevil becoming basically the Kingpin, sort of. And there was a cool anniversary issue where they got everyone in to draw a panel. Like, they have John Romita Sr. draw a panel. I think they got like Gil Kane, they got, all these other, Klaus Janson draws a panel. So they got all these classic Daredevil artists to do panels, and he's fighting Kingpin. It's kind of, that was a cool issue. But I do think that the part of the problem is that he's, as far as like range for the character, everyone seems to kind of, there doesn't seem to be a lot that people can come up with to do with him. I always thought that the Catholic angle is more interesting than it seems to get. It doesn't seem to get enough play.
No. It's a great, I got a superhero that's a Catholic that wears a devil costume. Great stuff, man.
But they never, and it's infrequent that any superhero comic ever even considers or deals with the idea of religion, and it feels like a layup for storytelling. And I don't know that it's ever even, Miller doesn't really use it too much, but I mean, Kevin Smith, I think, works it in which I liked the Kevin Smith Joe Quesada stuff. That stuff was cool. And Joe Quesada did one, it wasn't particularly well written, but his art on it is amazing, called Father. That one is, let me see if I can pull it up. The way he draws Daredevil in that book is just insane. He's basically this hulking monster of a Daredevil, and it's incredible. I'll pull him out. I have him somewhere here.
No, I mean, I like Kevin Smith, and I like his forays into comics, but I liked it because he treats Daredevil the way I think all of us here at least see the character, as a Frank Miller character. He writes him like he's a Frank Miller character. And he played up the Catholic thing, which was, what something Frank introduced
Mhm.
to the character. Yeah, no, I like it, and Joe Quesada on the art is just always a good thing. He does so well with that like early 2000s Marvel style. I think he really embodies that well without being like sort of like I don't know. You can kind of roll your eyes at some of that stuff, but Quesada is always good.
Oh yeah. So here's the Quesada Daredevil book that I was talking about. It's called Father, and he draws him just as just
Oh,
I don't know
geez.
how he just
Oh, wow.
draws him as this enormous
Oh wow,
beast of
yeah.
a daredevil. There's one scene where he's on a motorcycle, and it's so nuts. Let's see, I think it's at the end of this issue. Yeah, here you go. Daredevil in a samurai costume on a motorcycle, and it's
Oh
like
man.
it
God.
just denies any sort of any sort of realism and just goes completely bonkers. But it's worth it for the art alone. I don't know that it gets talked about much, but it's his art in that is so cool. And it's like one of those things where you're like, oh man, I kind of wish that Quesada would draw more, did more comics, and he really didn't. Like there's not like a ton of, I don't know, there doesn't to me like for as big of a figure in comics as he is, his influence is not necessarily his art as much as it is he's been the like editor in chief there for so long.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I didn't even know that he was an artist. I just knew he was the chief over
That's
at
interesting.
Marvel.
Wow.
Because his art is, I mean, I guess the other problem is like outside of the Quesada Daredevil stuff, like what there's not a lot of like books that he did that are particularly worth hunting down. Like outside of his art, but like they're not like I don't think there's a ton of great Quesada books out there. He did a lot of Valiant stuff, which whatever, and he did stuff. I think he did some of the
Azrael.
yeah, the Azrael stuff,
But
which again, it's
that's no
like you're
straight
not.
because Kevin Nolan inked it. Is how I.
Uh, that's also a good point. But are you read? It's not stuff that you necessarily want to go bother to read.
Yeah, no, I don't care about that stuff.
Like
Just gonna
it's
be
like the
honest.
art's cool, but there's no like, he's just done so many odd projects that are like, meh, his art's worth it, but there's no point.
Yeah.
So, on the Daredevil topic, of course, he's very much a Frank Miller character, and the really main public persona attached to the character have been those of the Ben Affleck film, but more recently the Charlie Cox TV show. And with
Thank God.
Marvel's reacquisition of the rights of the character, I want to ask you guys, would you prefer that in their Marvel Cinematic Universe they keep Charlie Cox as Daredevil and therefore keep the continuity of that show, or recast the role and we get a Daredevil adaptation on film?
Well, the show's in continuity with the MCU,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I thought so.
Well, technically. So
In
here's the thing
theory,
with
yeah.
Marvel TV is that there were several Marvel TV projects, but they're not considered in continuity mainstream with the MCU currently. So like Agents of
I
Shield.
thought the Netflix stuff was.
Well, so the consideration is that even though they reference events in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like in the first Daredevil season, they bring up the attack on New York from the first Avengers movie. Agents of Shield
Right.
references like the fall of Hydra and whatnot. Those shows take place in like almost a pocket universe. It's like not.
Right.
It's like adjacent. It doesn't even affect the broader thing. Like it's not essential viewership as opposed to the Disney Plus shows that are coming out, which are considered very much
Essential
so.
viewing.
Yeah, essential viewing.
Yeah.
I think that the Netflix shows are in that same thought at the moment that if you've seen them, great, but they're not really part of the whole continuity.
Well, that's silly. I didn't finish the third season of Daredevil, but I liked the first two seasons.
Third season's great.
Yeah, I would
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
see Charlie Cox
Yeah.
continue to play Matt if they bring him in somehow.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense that you
They
would
will.
replace him.
They will, but what I'm curious about and what I kind of half expect is that they'll actually subtly retcon a few little things. I don't know what, but I think that they'll, there might be story arcs that they ignore or bring in. And with that said, it also depends on the other characters from that show that they will either keep or recast, because that show in some ways was so perfectly cast. I really hate to see anybody else come in and play the Kingpin.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh
also,
Yeah.
Oh my
if
God.
you haven't seen the third season, the guy that plays Bullseye, oh my God, like it's might be my favorite season of that whole show. And for the Bullseye scenes alone, I was shocked how great that was. And it left on a cliffhanger where it was like, oh my God, you guys have to follow up on this. But I think that Matt Murdock is supposed to show up in Spider-Man 3 as Peter Parker's lawyer. That's what I've heard.
Yeah,
Oh,
I saw
that'd be
some stuff
fun.
about that.
What's that?
I saw some stuff about that.
Yeah.
I wasn't that excited about it because I'm not that excited about Spider-Man 3.
Oh, you're not?
Yeah, I
Also
I
weird
haven't
and
seen
fan
any of them.
servicey.
Spider-Man
I'm
Home
excited.
Slice?
Yeah,
Oh, no.
that one.
They announced the title. It's called
No Way Home, is it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Spider-Man
And
Home
Dr.
Wrecker?
Octopus is coming
Spider-Man Phone Home?
Yeah.
Wait, but they're I haven't seen any of them, to be honest. The new Marvel Spider-Mans, and I'm perfectly okay with that. Yeah,
They're great.
but I just everything seems like it's like they're trying to pull you to watch 15 other things, and that drives me nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like them. I don't love them. I think that they're good. Nothing I've seen that they've done since like 2004 or whatever has touched the Raimi films. And I know that Spider-Man 3 came out in like 2007, but I really really like Tom Holland. Zendaya is perfect. I mean, she's playing MJ, but she's not like the character really. But I love her, and I like that she's in those movies. I like them. I think they're
Yeah,
good.
I like them.
I love those.
I thought
those
the
movies.
first one was better than the second one.
Yeah.
Of course, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't really remember the second one that much. I remember Jake Gyllenhaal was in it.
There's not much to. Yeah, it's not terrible, but it's not as good as the others. I think the first one is a real classic. I love it.
The first one's
I
good,
really
yeah.
like the first one. The first one's great.
But I'll also interject that I did not like any other Spider-Mans. Well, I take that back. I like Spider-Man 2 is really good.
Mm-hmm.
That the Amazing Spider-Man had its moments.
I'm actually
but-
with you on this, Todd. Yeah,
Yeah.
everyone.
I
This
like-
is partly why I can't be asked with the new Spider-Man movie they're doing, just because it's so like, they're just like, we're bringing back the Raimi Spider-Man, and I'm like, okay, I don't remember that being very good in hindsight. I remember loving it as a kid, but I'm not that keen to see Tobey Maguire be Spider-Man again. Sorry.
I don't understand how that works. I feel like that's confusing, and it's just confusing to be confusing.
Yeah.
Like, just
Well, they're doing the Spider-Verse, so it's not like they're not replacing him. They're bringing in Andrew Garfield. I thought I heard they were bringing in like even other. I heard that maybe this is baloney, but I heard that they were going to have Leonardo DiCaprio show up as a alternate universe Spider-Man, because apparently James Cameron was going to do a Spider-Man at one point, which I think that's probably just a rumor, but I think it's really funny. I think that would be interesting.
But I feel like that's just, that whole concept is just, I don't like, that works for animated, I think, because
Spider-Verse.
Yeah, but I feel like live action, it just feels so bizarre and needlessly confusing.
It
Also,
works
it
for
seems
some
so
characters.
early.
I don't understand why they need to apply it to Spider-Man, but I think the cartoon movie was great, and
Yeah.
pulled off awesome.
Yeah, I think it's really
Not the
early to
direction
do
I
that
would
with
go.
Tom Holland's Spider-Man, and I also think why? Because the animated one did it so great. It's not going to be better.
Right.
That's my big complaint with
Right.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's like Daredevil Born Again. Like, the one complaint maybe I have about the TV show is they were trying to go there really fast, and I was like, you got all the time in the world, just relax. Like, that really is Born Again is the last Daredevil story, really, in many ways.
Yeah,
And
that was my
TV,
problem with
what's that?
that was my problem with how they handled Elektra too. Is it just like
Oh yeah,
why and it was my problem with all the way that the Netflix shows handled the everything was that it's like they'd spend just hours of television on some subplot that no one gave a crap about, and
yeah,
then they'd burn through the actual story within the final 3 episodes, and it's like, well,
yeah,
they just didn't, they weren't focused.
yeah.
The Punisher show, which should have been awesome because again, like Bernthal was perfectly cast, and
Oh yeah. Oh
like
man.
that show should have been so awesome. Except,
Thank you for saying that.
but like,
Bernthal's the best.
Yeah.
like
He's not who I would cast, but yeah,
half the friggin' season, it's like, oh, I'm not going to be the Punisher, and it's like,
yeah,
and then it's like, no one. I'm sorry, no one cares about the FBI agent lady. Like, I don't care.
yeah,
I don't. Doesn't matter. I'm not here for that. And
yeah.
there's this willful, like ignorance of like, who is your audience? Your audience is people who wants to watch a Punisher show.
Yeah.
I understand that the Punisher is a vigilante. I don't want to be the Punisher, but I do want to watch the Punisher kill bad guys. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
Well, so
Well,
That's
why make
why
the show
you
if they're
guys
not gonna
kind of-
do that, you know?
you guys kind of hit the nail on the head with what I actually kind of think is the main reason that I would be okay with them recasting Daredevil for the MCU is that on that TV budget, I don't think that it's a great show, don't get me wrong, but I think on film you could do a really great trilogy adaptation of any of Frank Miller's work. Like any of the main plot beats could be their own film, and you could make a really great trilogy out of that alone, with that higher budget and potentially, you know.
I don't think that Disney and Marvel Studios would go as dark as the show though. And
That's true.
If we're talking about like that Miller-esque Daredevil, like
They
that's
might.
what I want. And maybe they would. Maybe they would.
They might.
You know, that Cruella trailer dropped and they're doing dark and gritty now too. So
are they? The best, I mean, the best Punisher on screen is the Punisher Warzone movie, because it's at least unapologetically violent and
man,
just,
that's a fun movie.
oh, so much fun. And I will say, and I haven't watched the Ben Affleck Daredevil, but they did release that director's cut of it. I haven't watched it in ages, but they did release a director's cut of it, and I remember that being slightly better.
Better than
I unabashedly loved that film growing up.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, well, my early experience with Daredevil as a child was with Spider-Man the Animated Series, and I really connected with the character in that show. I was like, oh my god, I love this guy. Like, red was my favorite color. I was all in on Daredevil. But then the film came out, and then a couple years later I was allowed to see it because I was a little bit too young to go in theaters and catch that. But I loved that film. I rented it
I think
several times
it was
on
rated
VHS.
R, wasn't it?
No, I think it was PG-13.
Oh,
Yeah,
was
it was
it?
PG-13.
I
Oh,
would imagine.
Man,
remember it being rated
I was
R
head
for
over
some
heels
reason.
for that film growing up. I loved everything
Same.
about it. Michael Clark Duncan as Kingpin, great.
Interesting.
Yeah, he was
oh
good.
yeah.
That was good casting. They did, but oh, and I liked who they had as Ben Urich was oh, what's his face?
Oh, the guy from
yeah.
Matrix, yeah.
Yeah.
So I have it here somewhere. Oh, here it is. Yeah, the director's cut. 30 additional minutes not
Whoa,
shown.
30.
Yeah.
Yippee.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Uh-huh.
That's good. Some
Yeah.
good minutes.
It makes a big difference.
I do remember watching that movie as a kid and going like, "Oh wow, it's so like
All right.
dark and violent," and
Well,
of course he was
yeah.
wearing leather because like X-Men had come out, and so it's all leather.
let me
Um,
Nate, let me tell you something. You can take the dare as never before with this all new director's cut version of Daredevil. It's grittier and edgier than the original theatrical release.
oh
Oh,
shit!
no.
Yep. Yep.
That's got too much for me, I think.
This is the definitive Daredevil. More thrilling, more amazing, and more daring than ever. I might have to watch it again. I'll give it a review.
I do actually, all joking aside, remember it being a bit too much for me when I was a kid. I got the
Really?
video of it. Yeah, and
violent?
I was like same age as Mike, and I remember watching it and like feeling like I guess I liked that. It was pretty upsetting.
Well, because they do the whole. I mean,
Yeah,
and she does die. It's
yeah. I remember
it's pretty
being like,
rough.
Yeah.
shit, really? She dies?
Kid you not.
But I feel like they did a better job in that. My point of bringing it up is they do a better job in the Ben Affleck movie of doing the Electra arc than they do in the TV show, which had like triple the time.
Yeah.
Like the TV show, from what I remember, she dies from a hand ninja on a rooftop.
I don't remember. Oh God.
Like you
Yeah,
don't even
something
remember
like
it because they did such a poor job with it.
Well, that's part of
Yeah.
the problem with that adaptation on the show is that half of that season is the Punisher stuff, and it's incredible, and it's like breakneck speed, like all this stuff is happening, and like it's a really great moral debate between these two characters who are toe to toe in their combat capability, right? But then the second half of the season is the Electra arc, and I think it just totally falls flat because it's not a great adaptation of her story.
No, and you never have time. They just, I don't know, and that's one of those things that sort of with the that what's done so well with that the whole arc in the comics is that it takes it takes its time, and it sort of, and so when it happens, it actually, everything, it means something because he's taken his time to establish everything. But also, like, you think about those comics, they're so dense. I mean, most pages have like 12 to 13 panels on them. I mean, there is no space wasted on pages that in that run.
Are you talking about Miller's Daredevil? What are you talking about?
Yeah, Miller's Daredevil.
Yeah, Matt,
Yeah.
actually, I brought it up when I was rereading the artist edition with Mazzucchelli that there are scene transitions on a page. So it goes from one location to another location within panels. And I was really thrown off by that because I had never seen that before in contemporary comics. Like, it's really not a moment is wasted in that book. No, all page real estate is used.
I wish that people would take that lesson more frequently.
Yeah. Well, when they started out, there was like for the first issue that Miller wrote, it had like everything that happened in the first 4 issues happened. Like, it was supposed to be a lot shorter. And Mazzucchelli actually called him up and was like, "Hey, let's stretch this out. Let's, can we make this breathe?" And and I think that the Karen Page was something that they did not plan on, and it ended up happening kind of organically, where they both were like, "Hey, what if we brought back Karen Page?" She just seemed to fit, and so there's a lot of spontaneity, I think. And the scene transitions, the time transitions are really interesting because you'll notice that Mazzucchelli shifts the panels slightly. In other words, like, instead of a straight column, it'll be like one scene, and then the second scene will be just down a notch so that it seems slightly out of time with the previous panels.
Hmm.
It took me a long time to figure it out, and it's one of those things I go back to look at, and then I'm reading it, and I'm like, wait, what was I looking at again? But yeah, storytelling wise, like there's just so many great things that Mazzucchelli becomes a master of during his time on that book.
He really does become a master in like
Yeah.
while drawing that book. Like that's
He does, and I'm a little obsessed with. Have you guys read I believe it's 219, the issue that Miller wrote with John Buscema?
where he goes into like the town, like a Jersey town.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's a retelling of Clint Eastwood movie. It's a High Plains Drifter, I think.
Yeah, that's probably what it is.
But it to me is fascinating because this is like Miller in his prime, probably working on The Dark Knight Returns and a bunch of other things, and about to work on stuff with Mazzucchelli. And yet, it's interesting to contrast that book with the Mazzucchelli stuff because I don't think 219 works, and it's really interesting to try to figure out why. Because that's John Buscema, it's not like it's some hack.
Yeah.
But I think intuitively you can kind of see the limitations of somebody that didn't know how to. I don't know what he should have brought to the material, but whatever it is, it doesn't really work. And I realize I'm saying that about somebody that I really probably have no business saying it, but I'm going to do it anyways. So.
But is it Buscema's fault that it doesn't work though? Like,
I don't know who else's fault it would be. Let's put it that way.
I don't know that the story really like
Yeah,
ever
the story might not be that
feels
great.
right.
But if you in your Daredevil omnibus, the plot for that story is in like what Miller gave him to work with is in there. And so
Oh, really?
yeah. What's interesting to me is the idea of what would it take to make that story work. What if Mazzucchelli had drawn it? Because that could have been their first collaboration. And if so, what would Mazzucchelli have called him up and said, "Hey, I like this, but I don't like that. Can we flesh some things out?" Or would that have not worked either, just because the story wasn't very good? I don't know. I think it's a really interesting thing to look at.
Todd,
Because
actually, you just brought up a really interesting thing I wanted to get to. We're rounding that hour mark, but I wanted to get to this question before we jumped around at all. But in a world where Frank Miller never made it in comics, and we were never graced with his prolific Daredevil run, who's a creative team that you think in comics history at any period of time, it could be the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, who do you think would have had a very prolific Daredevil run?
Nobody. I think Daredevil would have gotten canceled, and it'd be a footnote.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think.
Mm.
What do you
Yeah,
think,
it's
Matt?
like it's so strange because so much of like I feel like so much of American comics history relies upon
Who was there?
really that Miller
Yeah.
run.
Yeah.
It turns on that almost because
Mm-hmm.
if he doesn't make that, then he doesn't make Dark Knight
Yeah.
Returns. He doesn't make Ronin, which is key to a lot of sort of creator ownership stuff.
Right.
It I don't think that you can ever overstate his effect on the trajectory of American like comics. I mean, like I think that like the Brubaker Phillips team would obviously have make a great Daredevil team, and I think that Brubaker's done Daredevil or has done a run on Daredevil, but like they don't exist without Miller. Like,
yeah, it's all either them trying to do Miller or a reaction to Miller. Like I think even the Mark Waid stuff is a reaction to the Miller stuff of like let's make this fun again, and that's I think totally awesome. Actually, I think there's absolutely a time and a place for that. But yeah. On the other hand, I think Daredevil's such a great character. I guess there is the possibility that somebody could have come along and said, "Hey, this is an awesome character. I'll take it since nobody else is doing anything." I don't know what it would have been like though. Could have been just another uninteresting failure or
Well, they probably don't take it in the same like kind of crime
yeah,
ninja direction that he ends up taking it in.
yeah.
Although maybe you can see like in an alternate universe, maybe Chaykin ends up on it.
Maybe.
You know, because they were at the same, they were contemporaries.
Of course.
But I feel like Chaykin would have bristled at the thought of drawing Daredevil
Well, I just
at the
watched an
time.
interview with Chaykin where they actually asked him to come in and pitch a Superman thing before John Byrne, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he said
Wow.
his big thing in it. Yeah, he said he got laughed out of the room. They were like, "Get out of here." But he said he wanted to do a Superman where everybody knew Clark Kent was Superman except Clark Kent. In other words, he thought he was fooling everybody, and everybody was like, "No, we just like the fact that he's Superman, and we're not going to tell him that it's completely obvious that he's Superman." So, which I thought was really funny. But I think Chaykin doesn't care about superheroes very much, and I understand that.
Yeah.
But then again, I don't know.
But I feel like that's what it I don't know. It is interesting. I mean, and
Yeah,
it it, he ends up saying Miller ends up saying so much with these sort of other properties,
yeah,
Batman, Daredevil, that he ends up making them into his own characters, and I don't know that there's
yeah,
anyone that there's a lot of people who can do the same thing right now, and I think that's part of it is that back to the whole thought of this was a failing book, and so he was just allowed to do whatever the heck he wanted. Like, there's
yeah.
just way too much control these days too, like where you're just simply
Well,
not shaking
yeah,
things up like that.
yeah. I mean, to me, I think the new version of that is you do create your own stuff and come up with your own character.
Yep.
But the days of somebody coming in and taking a character, oh, nobody cares about Ant-Man. That was always I thought, well, do the Ant-Man or the Atom because nobody cares about those characters.
Hmm.
But somebody probably has gone in and done that. But yeah, I think there's so many other options now that I think it's time to think outside the box. And
Yeah.
why it's like Watchmen. At the end of Watchmen, as much as I love it, it's like why do this with superheroes? I think that you can do anything you want now.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like the superhero form is it's such a limiting thing that, and it's like I feel like
Yeah.
there's no benefit of making new ones.
No. Like some getting the call to draw Batman, believe it or not, is I hope I don't regret saying this, but it's not my idea of a good time. Like, because there would be so much red tape and so much you can't do. There would be so little wiggle room,
Oh
and
yeah.
there'd probably be some take on it that would be terrible. Like, having that, oh, nobody cares, so I can do whatever I want. This is awesome. Because I think what Miller did want to do on Daredevil is he wanted to make crime comics, and I
Hmm.
think he got the opportunity earlier than expected.
Yeah.
And on top of that, he unexpectedly goes back later and has the best collaboration of probably his career with one of the great cartoonists to ever come out of North America, David Mazzucchelli. And I mean, what a great moment.
But do you think Born Again, just on quickly on Born Again,
Uh-huh.
it's not a particularly fun comic. Like, that's a tough one to recommend to people. Like, because it's the furthest from a superhero comic I think you can possibly get.
I read it when I was like maybe 12, 13, 14, 15, and it knocked my head off. And I think, again, it's like if a kid's into it, that's great. But it's not the first one I would recommend for somebody, depending on what they're just trying to get into. I think it's not accessible, but I think it's there's so many great things going on in it.
Hmm.
Man, I don't even know where to start when it comes to how much I love that comic. I also have a theory. If I told you this theory that I'm pretty adamant about this. Is that Miller got the plot for Born Again from the Eddie Murphy comedy Trading Places?
No.
I've never heard this
I
theory.
am not kidding.
No.
I am not kidding. I was watching Trading Places and I was like, oh my God, this is Born Again. If you watch it, I heard at one point, like, him and John Byrne and Shooter were kind of talking back in the day about how they would see movies and stuff and think, I could steal this plot and nobody would ever know. And not talking about that, but like, if you watch the movie, it's about two old men that there's this rich guy played by Dan Aykroyd, and they have this bet going of, like, are some people meant to be rich and can't make it? What if we switched places? So they systematically ruin his life, and he has no idea how it's happening. And he goes from being this rich, snotty Wall Street guy to everybody turning their back on him. They frame him for something. He ends up dressing as Santa Claus. Happens at Christmas. And he gets paranoid. He gets crazy because he thinks everybody's after him after a while. People are like, hey, how's it going? And he's like, what? What did you mean by that? But I was like, man, this is totally Daredevil. Like, they break him down. But then eventually he figures out that these old rich guys did it to him and plots his revenge against them and turns the tables, essentially, with Eddie Murphy. So I'm just telling you, if you watch the movie, I was like, this is totally Born Again. And I'm really surprised. I think he went to see the movie and thought it would be really interesting to do this as a serious story and break down, Murdoch, because I think Miller there was things he didn't like about him being a lawyer and thought it didn't really work. And, but the way that the plot becomes him, he's paranoid, he doesn't understand, it's all behind the scenes, he loses his money, he can't figure out why. Meanwhile, Eddie Murphy is sort of the Foggy Nelson character, where he takes this other guy and he's like, why is all this special stuff happening to me? All of a sudden I'm rich and it's great, but I'm also suspicious because something's not right here. And so I think one of the plot lines that got lost was that Murdoch and Nelson were going to team up again and start taking down the Kingpin that way. And he ends up falling in love with a hooker.
Which
I'm just telling you.
Karen Page
sounds crazy,
essentially is.
Yeah, I'm telling you. If you watch it, you'll be like, oh yeah. I mean, I think so.
it you know what? It sounds convincing.
Well, yeah. I mean, I am just I know the story because it's my favorite comic, but it never occurred to me before where exactly they got the story from. But there was just too many parallels. And then I went and I was like, okay, when did this movie get made? And it was during that time period where Miller was doing other stuff. And I feel like he went back, he saw this movie and thought, I thought I was out of ideas for Daredevil, but I've got this other story I want to do. And so Daredevil was failing again when he left and was actually going to get canceled again. And so when he was brought in, he actually was brought in to end the series. So he was saying, what would the last Daredevil story be? As he was thinking, what's the last Batman story? But I think with both of those, he wrote a backdoor way out, meaning the 2 more issues that were supposed to happen with Doctor Strange. And I do think he left Dark Knight open for a sequel.
Which he eventually would make.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was great.
Yeah.
I actually like that series.
I do too. I think it actually it's actually gotten a lot better with age, and unfortunately it's become more relevant with age too.
Yeah, I think if you read between the lines, there's some really good stuff going on in it, and there's a lot of ideas there that he probably had percolating for a long time, but for whatever reason, when he did it, it was not. He just wasn't, I don't know, at his best, maybe, or something. I I've heard some speculation, and I don't want to.
I think that the art people have a struggle with, and that's grown on me a lot over the years.
A better colorist could have done something really interesting with some of that art, but
there is a lot to be said about the colorists.
Well, I think that it's also that was the advent of Photoshop and Lynn's trying out new tools and not everything.
Well,
yeah, I think Lynn Varley's just going crazy there. Yeah.
Oh, that also probably was happening too.
Yeah. So she also might have been like, "Fuck go." I mean, who knows?
Well, on that note, here, guys, we'll start jumping around to see where everybody got to throughout the course of the episode. But, Matt, I can see that your page has gotten crazy far, and it's making me feel very self-conscious about how fast I can draw a page. But let's jump over to you and see how far you got.
It's not very... This last figure is the best one. This stuff didn't really come up. I needed to pencil more, and I didn't. So
another one falls to the folly of trying to draw a whole page in one episode.
Looks damn good to me.
Yeah, no, it does look fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's
If I did a little bit more penciling, I think that the inking would have been a lot easier. But oh well, I'll finish it.
See, I actually really like it. I love that first panel. I really like the contrast.
Oh, thank you.
I think it's hard to talk and draw at the same time, frankly.
Yeah, that is a tough one. I haven't talked a lot on this
episode.
Like,
okay, I'm gonna have to go back after this and actually concentrate.
A fundamental flaw in our setup here.
Oh, that's okay.
Well, Matt, your page is turning out great, man, and
Thanks.
I'm excited to see it in finality, whether it's colored or not. But it's turning out great so far. So, but guys, we'll hop around. Johnny, how is your Daredevil Bullseye piece coming along?
Pretty good, I think. Unless I'm drunk. Which has happened before. I've woken up the next day after a few shows and been like, God, what the fuck was I drawing last night? I did start inking before, but I'm onto my fourth figure, and I've got a bunch of background done that I definitely did before. So I've got Bullseye, Slug, and Daredevil there. If you can see that, yeah. And then while we were rounding out there, I finished up the first background Daredevil. In typical me fashion, I had to go back in afterwards and put all the seams in there in his costume because I just like putting them in.
That looks sweet.
Thanks, man. I really like. Yeah, I think this was as I got a bit more inebriated, but I went like a lot more like wavy and wobbly with the lines on his face there. I really like that.
Yeah, that's
You're
awesome.
like doing the like a movie TV kind of costume on him.
Yeah. There's a little bit of Ben Affleck in there, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened, but yeah, I put some pants on him. I don't know if Ben Affleck's thing has pants on over his
he
costume.
does.
Does he?
It's all leather. It's all leather.
Okay, this is very Daredevil movie, but
yeah,
I like it.
I like it.
Yeah, and I gave Bullseye white eyes. I don't know if he ever has white eyes, but I don't get how his mask and costume are working there. There's like a mask, and then underneath it, his face is like, his eyes are black, but then his like actual eyeballs are white. I don't know.
Yeah, when he first was created, he had white eyeballs like Batman.
Okay, cool. There we go then. It's a reference to that.
Yep. Yeah.
And a missing tooth. I really like he always has like a horrible grin that I really like. So I had to get that in there while he's punching Daredevil.
Came out awesome.
Yeah, going pretty good, I think. Like I said before, I am like really going to town on like rendering on this one. And again, I might wake up tomorrow and be like, what the fuck am I doing? I need to simplify this. But I like it right now. I like all the lines.
Yeah, Johnny, I love it so far.
Thanks, man.
And like you were saying, you
Oh.
were looking at Brian Boland for reference, and I definitely see that in your inking
Yeah,
variation on this
yeah.
one.
Yeah, thanks, man. Where does it show up best? I feel like in the gloves it shows up best. That's a very Brian Boland glove, I think.
Whenever you see a lot of feathering, that's Brian Boland.
Yeah, exactly. I was already like going that way. I already did a lot of feathering, and now lately I've just been looking at like every artist that does like a lot of feathering like that. And
Who
so
else are you
every
looking at?
piece, I'm just like, this one I'm doing like Pashima. This one I'm doing like Brian Boland.
Wow.
Anything to stop people from comparing me to Charles Burns on Instagram, which is not stopped.
Yeah.
Oh, now that you say that, Johnny, I can see that.
I got this new brush. I was like, I wonder whether I guess it's a good thing that this looks less like Charles Burns. And I was also kind of like, is that getting away from something that people liked? Because a lot of people really liked that about my work. And then, nope, it's okay. I got a comment yesterday from someone being like, this looks like Charles Burns. I was like, okay, cool. Well, it still looks like what I was doing before, I guess. Then
Yeah. There's
don't know whether it's a good thing or a
worse
bad thing.
people to be compared to.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't be
that's
upset
what
about
I'm
that.
thinking. Yeah. Also, there's no way to be like, oh, I didn't mean it to be like that. I've completely started out my drawing copying Charles Burns.
Your work is coming out great so far, and
Thanks, man.
ambitious as always. You know,
Yeah.
your figures are turning out great, but man, I applaud you for taking on that challenge. That's a lot of work
Thanks,
to draw
buddy.
that scene.
Yeah.
One of these days I will do what I set out to do from the start and do something simple, because I can't keep doing this.
But guys, to jump around, Todd, how is your cover turning out?
Oh God.
Oh, God.
Yeah, slow. I'm not going to be finishing this. I already ran out of layers, so I had to. So basically, I have like 3 drawings at least, maybe 4 going right now. So with each one, I have to pick a figure, and I do all the layers on that one. So there's my bullseye, and there's my Elektra, and that's about as far as I've gotten.
Love
I have
the
to tell you,
Elektra.
Yeah.
So like, here's a drawing I did for my nephew. Well, I did it before that, but anyways, like, this is the kind of stuff where I'm like overdoing it, and there is a big part of me that kind of almost wants to add a couple little things and then stop in a spot like this and do it much more just like shape. And I'm very tempted, I think, especially like if I was drawing a comic, kind of what Johnny was saying, it's like it's great to do all this rendering for a cover or once in a while, but to do an entire comic that way makes me wonder if I need to think real hard about that which I am about to undertake.
Yeah.
I don't see any reason why an approach like this is necessarily anything wrong with it. There's some more hair. There's some other stuff going on. But there's some tough stuff. Like, that was a tough angle to get. And it actually, like, for all the fun I sometimes make of Miller's Anatomy, like, there's such great poses going on there, especially with Elektra. I tried to draw that and quickly realized that there's some really good stuff going on in it, and I really, really like that drawing a lot.
Yeah, that arm with the sigh is incredible.
I know.
Like the way it's tilted and
Right?
twisted.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Like, look at mine, and then look at his. Like, that was like, uh-oh, I'm in over my head here. Yeah. So, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes.
For colors, you were talking about deviating. Have you kind of solved that at all yet, or have you been focusing mainly on your figure work?
I haven't gotten that far yet. I'm going to have to just try things and see what works. Although I did start doing the Daredevil logo all in white, And the problem is I like that red background, but Daredevil's going to completely disappear into it. So I'll have to, again, like really think about how that's all going to work. But I feel like that Thor piece I did, like it was just, the colors were kind of, I don't know, it kind of looked like regurgitated food.
No, I thought that was super bombastic. And actually, with your comment to Daredevil on the red background, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing if you are deviating from the original. Like that could be a really cool graphic touch of this hidden pattern in the background of literally Daredevil's silhouette.
No, you're totally correct, and that's actually very tempting. And I'm forming the thought of what that might look like. Yeah. So stay tuned. To be continued.
Stay tuned.
You never know. Oh, and there's another Daredevil drawing I did. That's gonna be my my box art for him.
That's
Smart.
right.
Great reuse of that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I love drawing the echoey radar sense. Any chance I get to do that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So there you go.
Well, Todd, it's turning out great, man, and
Yes, sir.
I'm really excited to see what wacky solutions you come up with, because if anything, you are so eccentric in the way that you solve problems in your art. And with this cover recreation, I think you're going to come up with something really cool.
Yeah, I hope so. And I've got, like I said, I'm working on ghost stories, and I'm really trying to think outside the box in terms of how to approach it. And I'm pretty excited about what that's going to look like. So,
to jump around, Nate, are you wrapped up? I don't see you continuing to work like the rest of us. Are you done?
I am trying to figure out what I want to do. So my original plan was to like maybe put like a tree here along the bottom, but then I was like, that's another graphic element. I don't want to do that. And so now, because I just don't like what I'm seeing compositionally, I might take this whole, like these bottom two planes, and mostly, like this plane is blacked out. I might mostly black this plane out as well, just to give it some balance. I was going to draw a brick and stuff, and I might just do that, like, fading, feathery thing that I do on this entire bottom of the building here. But I'm also running into a problem where, kind of like Matt, I don't think I penciled enough of the architecture
you think
to
so?
where I should have just like started jumping in. And I'm using that as an excuse. I think I absolutely did pencil enough, and then I just wanted to jump in with the brush instead of actually going in, maybe with a pen, or at least with a brush and a ruler, and actually start laying out some lines. I decided to just take my brush and freehand some of the stuff, and so there's some wonky lines and a lot of whiteout on it now, and it's going to require a lot of sort of like surgical reparation. But yeah, I think I'm going to black this out, and that's going to solve a lot of just the black and white balance stuff that I'm not liking.
And you're talking about the background, the buildings, is that right?
Yeah, the buildings. Yeah, I'm actually really happy with Daredevil.
Yeah. That's good.
Whereas he was actually, when I was looking at the pencils, the thing that I was kind of the most iffy about. But I'm actually really digging it. I didn't know if I was going to do the thing that you kind of do with Daredevil, where, you do the heavy shadows within like the red suit. Because I did sort of like the, just sort of the basic shapes without any of the rendering, and really liked it. It reminded me a little bit of, not that I'm comparing myself to Bruce Timm, but I was like, oh, if Bruce Timm did like a line or a black and white drawing of Daredevil, it might look like this. Like if he showed up in Batman the Animated Series, he would probably look like this, and I really liked it. And I opted to go for the more, I guess, traditional thing, where you add like a lot of black. And that's one of the cool things about Daredevil, and I think you get the same thing with Spider-Man, where like you kind of have the freedom to add a lot of blacks to like the anatomy and the costume, and so I wanted to like do that as well, because I don't draw Daredevil enough. But But
we should
yeah,
do
the
another
figure is something I'm really happy about. Yeah, I would definitely, dude. I'd be so stoked to do another Daredevil episode, excuse me, or an
Yeah.
Elektra episode or something in
Yeah.
that
In
world.
the universe.
Kingpin.
I like
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Kingpin, oh my god, dude.
Well, in the
Just like
vein
a
of our
big
our
old
Hulk
boy.
versus in the vein of our Hulk versus Thor episode, we could do Black Widow versus Elektra.
Oh,
Two of the super heroines that Daredevil has been romantically tied to.
Yeah.
love me some Black Widow.
Yeah.
Well, Nate, it's coming along great, man, and I am so excited to see how it looks in finality, whether you color it, whether you leave it in black and white. It's an awesome Daredevil piece, and I think everybody
Oh,
can
thank you,
agree
sir.
with that.
Thank you.
But to wrap up the episode, I'll get to my piece real quick.
Yeah.
Mostly stuck around in this corner down here for the majority of the episode. I ended up putting the Daily Bugle on this billboard
Yeah,
right
man.
here. I left it as a big white space, and then I was like, you know what? I got to put something there. In the Spider-Man drawing I had done in the Foes of Spider-Man episode we did early on, I had just done the like bugle shape as like a logo on the background of a billboard. But this is too large to have done the same thing and have it read the same way. I was like, I'll just start putting in Daily Bugle. It's pretty tied to Daredevil, Ben Urich and whatnot. It works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
well, it's funny
I
you
like
say
the
that, 'cause,
the shared universe element of Marvel. They are in the same city, and
Of course.
of course it's New York. Yeah, it's just fun that these characters tie together. Spider-Man
Yeah.
and Daredevil, I think go together, at least in my mind, more so than maybe they're taking it a lot of times in the comics, certainly in the movies. I like Spider-Man as like a Daredevil type character, not like, angry and violent, but like a street level hero.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I just think that the character lends itself to that approach more so than like the cosmic stuff.
Yeah.
As much as I
Daredevil
like,
way too fast in the movies.
yeah, as much as I like Spider-Verse, I think it's an incredible movie. And as much as I love the Clone Saga, as everyone does,
As
The
everyone does.
prolific Spider-Man story.
just it's the best one. I think Spider-Man in the real world, quote unquote real world type stories, works best. Much like Daredevil. You never get Daredevil's never gonna go to another universe, and I don't think
Yeah,
Spider-Man
no.
should
You
either.
shouldn't. Yeah.
I agree.
I did mention this on the chat offline with you guys, like the unrecorded chat. But it's funny that you mentioned putting a little Spider-Man reference into yours because, like I said to you guys, I put a little advert with Mary Jane in the background of mine.
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
On the advert.
And I love it so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
Yes.
It's really just an excuse to put her in.
Well, Johnny,
Yes.
I have you up on the screen if you want to showcase your Mary Jane pencils.
Sure, yeah, there we go. So, just a
there you
drawing of Mary Elizabeth Winstead there, but I'm going to give her red hair. I don't know how I'm going to color this, or if I am.
Give her the Scott Pilgrim red hair. I watched that the other day, so it's fresh on the
Ooh,
brain.
Yeah, I'm going to do that.
but-
Also, the text that I wrote up there just says Chanel. I was like trying to think of like a fake perfume thing, and then I was like, you know what? It's going to be in the background anyway. Fuck it, just write up a real perfume.
Make it
Just
Hey,
be
make
lazy.
it Channel,
Channel,
not Chanel Channel.
Well,
Yeah.
Johnny, it works. It's Marvel. It's the world right outside your window. It works.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
But everybody, that just about wraps up this episode 21 of Ink, Drink, Think. Of course, special thanks as always to Matt Battaglia, our guest tonight. Matt,
Yeah.
you're always a welcome guest here. You always bring great conversation to the group.
You're the fifth Beatle.
The fifth
I
Beatle,
love
it.
absolutely. And we're always happy to have you, man. And so grateful that we were able to get a Daredevil episode in and have you in on it.
I was excited to join.
You're
so
here for the
anytime
big
I-
ones, man.
Yeah.
You're here
Yeah.
for Batman. You're
I
here
just-
for Hellboy, and you're here for Daredevil. If we got a big character coming up, you got to be
I just
here.
my bat signal goes up, and I realize, oh crap, I got a free Thursday. I can make it.
But guys, if you want to give Matt some love, check out the description of this video where you can find the links to Matt's website and Matt's Instagram account, as well as the links to all of our Instagram accounts and the official Ink Drink Think Instagram page, where you can check out all the finished pieces from this episode, as well as all 20 episodes that precede it. Check it out, everybody.
Indeed.
Make sure you go to the comments below and let us know who in an alternate timeline could have had Daredevil claim to fame, such as Frank Miller. Nate says it's him, but
Me. Nobody gets Daredevil like I
That's
do.
right.
Just kidding. Just kidding. He would have been canceled. It would have been canceled. One issue, it would have been canceled.
egos are flaming once again on Ink Drink Think. But everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to episode 21. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Share with a friend if you can. And until next time, I have been Michael Pickard, joined by my wonderfully talented co-hosts and friends, Johnny Wise, Nate Wells, Todd Blackwood, and special guest, Matt Battaglia. We'll catch you guys next time.